Well, it's great to be with you. We are living in Bend, Oregon these days for about the last year and a half. And so this whole heat wave thing, people are complaining around here. I'm liking it quite a lot, actually. It was about 25 degrees when we flew out to come here. 25 degrees. That's chilly. And, you know, life is a little different for us. We're retired now, and it's great. And living in the mountains is cool. But you know what we had to get was an electric blanket. Yeah, and you know, so we've got one she's got her side and I got my side on this thing, and it's great. But you know, things are a little different. We're in this series of questions Jesus asked. Well, a regular question that I ask Carmen is, did you turn me on? And in retirement, that means the electric blanket. There's a lot of questions out there that are, you know, just regular, they don't really have much consequence. And then other questions that can be a little more important. And then there's also big questions. You know, paper or plastic, not a big deal. You can go either way on that. Then, you know, some have longer consequences. Should we get a puppy? Yes. That's a consequence kind of a question. After Thursday night service, a friend of mine came and told me a very funny story that ended in jail. And he said it all began with a question. I said, what was the question? He goes, the question was this. The guy said, Vato, do you drink tequila? He said, it's the last thing I remember. I woke up in jail. Which leads to other questions like, do you know why I pulled you over? Yeah. Then big questions. Do you take this man? Yes. Do you take this woman? Big question. Then from that follows other questions. Does this dress make me look? And those are trick questions, fellas. Be very, very careful how you answer those kinds of questions. Well, we're looking at a big question today from Matthew chapter 16. This scene is also found in the book of Mark and the book of Luke. It's a big question. And we'll begin in chapter 16 of Matthew, verse 13. It says this, when Jesus came to the region of Caesarea Philippi, he asked his disciples, who do the people say the Son of Man is? They replied, some say John the Baptist, others say Elijah, and still others Jeremiah or one of the prophets. But what about you, he asked, who do you say I am? Simon Peter answered, you are the Messiah, the Son of the living God. Jesus replied, blessed are you, Simon, son of Jonah, for this was not revealed to you by flesh and blood, but by my Father in heaven. And I tell you that you, Peter, that you are Peter, and on this rock I will build my church, and the gates of Hades will not overcome it. Now, this region of Caesarea Philippi was not a random detail. It was a religiously saturated and political charged region and environment that Jesus brought them to. Spiritual, political hotspot. One of the temples in this artist's rendition is to Caesar. And so you could go and worship Caesar. And, you know, so if you were also doing a little politics on the side, you'd want to be seen there. Caesar was the ultimate civil authority, and he proclaimed to be the spiritual authority. He called himself Caesar, son of God. And so this was the kind of mix of politic and religious weirdness. The god Pan was a very popular god to be worshipped there. One of the main reasons people went to this region was he was sort of this wild fertility god. A lot of sexual practices that were part of their worship experience. And in this, over here on the right side, you see sort of that open area there. That was sort of the dance hall where it was the hookup place, you know. And there was just all this was going on. And Jesus takes them to this place. Temples and shrines to other gods, little niches in the rocks where they would put different deities and altars to pagan gods. No devout rabbi would have taken his people there. You see the big cave there. There at this time, there was a spring that came out of it, and it was called the gates of Hades. And that's where they worshipped the god Pan, one of the spots. And it's Jesus in the last verse we read there said, the gates of hell will not prevail. He's referring to this. He's saying all of this darkness that you're seeing, all of this life that's happening around us, none of this can overcome what I'm doing. None of it can prevail. And he's saying, don't be afraid of it. Don't fear it. No good rabbi would have taken their disciples there. Any good Jew stayed far away from this region. And yet, Jesus takes his disciples there. It'd be like if the Baptists held their national convention in Vegas this year. Okay? Not going to happen, all right? They would never do that. All these competing voices in Caesarea Philippi were very loud, demanding attention, saying, look over here, this is the way to go. The overloaded spiritual voices. And in the middle of all of it, Jesus asked this question, who do you say I am? It feels surprisingly current. We're not surrounded by carved images today, but we are surrounded by digital ones. And there's all kinds of competing voices. This is truth over here. The truth is over here. And this is identity over here. If you want to gain identity, this is the path. Oh, you want freedom? Here's the way to have freedom. There are all kinds of voices surrounding us today, much like this day. And in Caesarea Philippi, everybody believes something. And in this place, you could just choose your God. You could just choose your God or just do a mashup. You can go over here for a while and go over there for a while. It's your truth. You do what you want with it. Sounds familiar. Everybody has an opinion about Jesus. My guess is everybody here in this room at this point has some opinion about Jesus. And he begins by asking the question of the disciples, who do the crowd say I am? Some say John the Baptist, others Elijah, still others Jeremiah or one of the prophets. So everybody knows who he is. He's kind of a big deal. People know him. Ron Burgundy, sorry, nobody got that. Okay. I'm going to keep trying. And this is interesting because people are comfortable talking about Jesus as long as they don't have to make a decision about Jesus. Today people say things like, well, he was a great teacher. He modeled compassion. He stood up to hypocrisy. He spoke to authority. And all those things are absolutely true, but incomplete. And incomplete truth can be just as misleading as falsehood. Lots of groups attempt to co-opt Jesus to their cause. I read this week about a congressperson in New Jersey that's running for office, and this statement, here's the quote. This person said, Jesus was likely a democratic socialist. I don't know that they were discussing democratic socialism in Rome at that time, but I wasn't there. But obviously co-opting. If I can get Jesus, see, Jesus thinks like I think. Jesus believes what I believe. We're grabbing this. Maybe you've seen the bumper sticker. Would Jesus drive a Ford F-250 Super Duty? I believe he would, but you may not. We've made Jesus so customizable, he's starting to look like a Build-A-Bear. Just whatever you want to put on him and co-opt. And if you hear people defining Jesus inaccurately in your opinion, just relax. It's not necessarily up to you to just set everybody straight. Well, this is what I believe about Jesus. And you get online and you go, well, that's a bunch of crap. And you think, I'm defending God. Just relax. Jesus was chill about it. He believes in free will. And so what do we do? Well, in the words of U2, one song, there's a line that says, stop helping God across the road like a little old lady. He's okay. It's pretty secure. And so just relax. Well, what are we to do then? Stay on mission. Well, what's the mission? I'm glad you asked. Micah 6:8 says, the mission is this, to act justly, love mercy, to walk humbly with your God. So what we really need to do is show it without having to shout it. Right on. I love having my mom here. Okay. And then Jesus pivots to the personal. This is the moment where everything sort of shifts. It's no longer public opinion. So what do you think about this? You know, oh, I think that about that. And now it's personal. But what about you? Who do you say I am? And this is sort of the seismic shift that happens within the disciples. Because they've been big fans of Jesus. And now they're moving into becoming followers of Jesus with this question. And it's the same move that every one of us is invited into. You may think well of Jesus. You might have issues with the church or religious people or, you know, the crazy uncle who likes to preach at Thanksgiving, all that stuff. But you're okay with Jesus. Now will you follow? See, Jesus didn't come to improve your life. He came to save your life. He didn't come to really enhance your life goals. He came to radically redefine your life. And that's what makes this question so uncomfortable. Because once you answer it honestly, you really cannot pretend that it doesn't matter. It matters greatly. Before we get into verse 16, this verse 15, who do you say I am? Before the answer comes up in 16, I don't think that was like an immediate thing. I kind of imagine they're all standing around, sitting around, I don't know. But at one point he goes, so, who do you say I am? And it's like the disciples are going, you say it. I ain't saying it. You say it. I think you should say it. Stop it. Don't tell me what to do. There was just this thing. And then maybe someone's moving behind another disciple so, you know, you can't be seen. There's just this uncomfortable deal. And then Peter has this unconditional surrender moment. And he says this, you are the Messiah, the Son of the living God. You're it. It's the ultimate closing episode of Undercover Boss. Oh my gosh, this guy we've been working with and talking with and hanging out with is the CEO. And in this case, he's the Christ, the King, the Messiah. He's God. They're recognizing that he's not a consultant or an advisor. He's not a spiritual assistant. Jesus is God. The Apostle Paul brings a clarifying statement to this in Colossians chapter 1. He said, Christ is the visible image of the invisible God. He existed before anything was created and is supreme over all creation. And it's beginning to dawn on them really clearly, after all they've seen to this point, we're hanging out with God who made all this. And if Jesus is God, you don't just believe in him or think well of him. You follow him. And following Jesus will cost you something. But thinking well of him, believing in him without following him will lead you to self-deception. Because then you just have to plug him into your life. Make him fit how you see it all working out and how he could maybe help you, assist you with your goals and your vision. We do a mashup. We just mash up Jesus into the life and make him what we want him to be in our life, because then he's controllable. When I was 17, I knew everything. I don't think there was anything I did not know, except maybe hair. I didn't know a lot about hair, but I had a lot of it. And at 17, I did know everything. Maybe you have a 17-year-old in your house and you understand what I'm talking about. They know everything. And so, senior year, I decided, what do I need school for? I quit because I had a great job at the gas station car wash. And I was, selling a little pot to preferred customers. And, so I kind of had it going on, had a little business thing, a little side gig. And so I quit high school and knew everything. And it was about shortly after that picture was taken, a friend invited me to church. And it was the very first time I heard the Jesus message of I could know him, that he cared, that, all of the stuff, the Jesus message. And I opened my heart and began to walk with Jesus that night. It was like, wow, this is amazing. It began to dawn on me that perhaps I didn't know everything. Hard for me to swallow, because I was pretty brilliant. High school dropout, car wash guy. But when I look back on it, it really came down to three things that I believed that night. I didn't know everything, but I believed certain things, and they were these. Jesus is God. He died for my sins. He loves me. That was it. And it began a journey. Later in the book of Matthew, chapter 21, there's a story. Jesus is speaking to the crowds and to many religious leaders at that little scene in a parable called the parable of the tenants, where a landowner builds a vineyard and then he brings in farmers to work the vineyard. He lives far away. At harvest time, he sends 3 servants to get his share of the harvest. And they say, well, we've been doing all the work. He's a long way off. And so they killed one guy, they stoned another, and beat up the third. The landowner sends more servants. They treat him the same way. And then finally, he sends his son. They'll take it seriously now. The son gets there and say, this is the heir. We kill him, we got all this, because he's far away. What do you think will happen with those farmers? And the religious leaders that are hearing it are ticked, because they know he's talking about them. He's talking about if you don't recognize God when you see him, it'll be given to another. They didn't like that. Why? Well, because they had too much to lose. They had a lot of stuff, they had a lot of power, and they had a lot of pride. They knew Scripture. They knew a lot of stuff about God. And it didn't fit into their thing. And so they couldn't see it. They didn't recognize it. I think it's a big reason why we resist surrender in our own lives. I got a lot of beliefs. And if what you're saying to me today, Mike, doesn't fit those beliefs, this is just tough. Hang on, don't give up on this yet. Suspend judgment for just a few more minutes and be open to a new idea perhaps. Why do we resist surrender to this? For some, it's the idea that your past disqualifies you. That, things are so jacked up that how could God ever even be interested in me? For some, this resistance to surrender is because the pain of some toxic religious environment that you've been in or event that happened to you. And so you've got Jesus mixed in with just these weirdos and these weird things that happened. And you're having a hard time separating those things. But I think for me, and I think for many people, often the biggest struggle with surrender is control. I just, I know what I want for me. And what I really want is for Jesus to want what I want for me too. And so I can sell him on it. I'm pretty good at selling Jesus on all the grand ideas I have. But I don't want to surrender them and trust him with them. It's control. Why do we resist? Well, one of the things that come up in this is that because if Jesus is God, then he gets to decide what's right and wrong. If Jesus is God, then he gets to decide morality and truth. And frankly, we don't naturally like that. We want to make those choices. We prefer Jesus who inspires us, not one who interrupts us. We like Jesus who comforts, not confronts. But Jesus never presented himself as optional. He didn't say, consider me. He said, follow me. Walk with me. In a book called The Reason for God by Timothy Keller, he quotes another great author, C.S. Lewis. And he said this, you must make a choice. Either this man was and is the Son of God, or else a madman or something worse. Who do you say he is? Who is this Jesus? Well, identity is the door, and surrender is the key. We're all invited in. The key is surrender. Jesus asked, who do you say I am? He wasn't starting a theological discussion. He was getting to the heart of identity. Because what you believe about Jesus is going to impact greatly what you end up believing about you. If Jesus really is God in the flesh, then your identity is clarified. You are not an accident of biology. You're not defined by your past, how you've done wrong or how you've been wronged. You're not defined by your failures or even your successes. The fact is, you are someone deeply loved and intentionally created by God for God. That's who you are. And that kind of identity clarity is empowering. I'm no longer then crushed by someone's hurtful words or actions toward me. They don't have to have the same kind of impact because I have a sense of security in who I am. Their opinions end up getting filtered through this grid of God's love and acceptance and forgiveness. It's like I've got an iron dome, Holy Ghost iron dome around my heart and mind. And so these things that used to penetrate deeply can't really get through. And it's a wonderful place to live. It's freeing. It's peaceful. One of the biggest struggles people face today is identity confusion. You know, I love the Jason Bourne movies. You act like you're too spiritual to watch movies or something. Anyway, I like them. My favorite one is Bourne Identity. First one. He wakes up, remember, he doesn't know who he is. You know, can you imagine you ask the question, who am I? And then your next sentence is, why do I have all these superpowers and I'm so awesome? That's not usually how we ask that question, is it? But Jason Bourne did. He goes, I can, run this, I can do that, I can kill anybody I want at any time. He was amazing. I'm not as amazing. Sometimes I ask, who am I? Why am I here? Does my life matter? Can I make a difference in this world? And the world around you will offer you thousands of definitions for who you are and why you're here. Well, it's for this kind of success. It's surrounding yourself with these kind of important relationships. It's gaining approval. It's being loved by other people. The problem with that is none of those things are strong enough to carry the weight of your identity because they shift and change, and you're always chasing them. Recognizing Jesus means identity stops being something you have to manufacture. It's something you just get to receive. Christian philosopher Dallas Willard once said this, the most important thing in life is not what you do, it's who you become. And we're all becoming. We're all in a process. And who we're becoming has a great deal to do with how we answer this question. Who do you say he is? When you settle that question of who Jesus is, you're getting a whole lot closer to settling the questions about who you are. Because the closer you get to him, the clearer your identity becomes. And if Jesus is not your king, something else is. We're good at crowning kings in our lives. What's king for you? Career? Relationship? Your pleasures? Your political tribe? We can crown those things kings, and they can't hold up under the weight, and they're brutal kings. And if you deviate at all, you're crushed. When you answer, you are the Christ, you're surrendering. It's this unconditional surrender. And when you do that, you're not losing freedom, you're actually stepping into real freedom. Because now your identity is not based on your performance. It's anchored in grace. Such good news. That's why the Jesus message is such good news. In The Divine Conspiracy, Dallas Willard wrote, "Grace is not opposed to effort. It is opposed to earning." You're not going to earn this. You can only receive this. And, you know, you think about these guys that were following him. You know, we revere them. But, you know, they were, you know, in many ways, they were the 12 dorks, not just the 12 disciples. I mean, they did and said some dumb things along the way, which makes me feel so much better about me and you. They didn't earn their role. They accepted an invitation to follow. And it's the same invitation we're given. And now here they are, and it's dawning on them who Jesus is. You're the Christ, the Son of the living God. And Jesus responds in kind of a surprising way. He said, "Blessed are you, Simon, son of Jonah, for this was not revealed to you by flesh and blood, but by my Father in heaven." Peter didn't arrive at this conclusion because he was the smartest dork in the room. You know, he didn't win a theological debate. Something deeper happened. God opened his eyes. He recognized who he was. And Jesus isn't just affirming the answer. He's revealing in this how our faith actually works. It's an inside job. And here's why this matters so much to us today. Each of us needs our own Matthew 16 moment. You need to know what you think about who Jesus is. Not what your parents thought, or what your church thinks, or what some influencer considers most important. You've got to have this. It's an inside job for you, for each of us. A moment when that question moves from theory to personal. A moment when I am willing to really ask, what do I believe about Jesus? Well, I am not 17. I'm 70. And in that space of time, I know more stuff. I know a lot more stuff. I did quit high school, but don't worry, I lied a couple months later and got into college, a little community college. There was no computers, so I told them, I'll get those transcripts to you. And so then I was in college. And then I transferred to the University of Oregon as a junior college transfer, no high school diploma, no SATs. So kids, quit. Just quit school. It's a waste of time. All the social anxiety stuff, drop it. You're welcome, parents. And, you know, at one point I was helping to plant a church. I was on this team, and they were asking me to start speaking something. I realized I don't even have a high school diploma. And so I thought, well, this has been working for me so far. So I went to this seminary, and they let me in. So the only thing I have is a master's degree in theology. I got nothing else. And so if you kind of, are a scammer, Jesus will go with it. He'll help you. He will help you all the way. 17 to 70. But here's what I know now. I know a lot more. What I know is Jesus is God. And he died for my sins. And he loves me. And in this process of surrender, I want you to know, I have struggled between 17 and 70 with that surrender thing. Whew. Really hard at times. It's very difficult at times. And I come back to it. He's God, and I have learned that I can surrender to love. He knows what's best. He wants what's best, and now I believe it more. At 17, I bought in. At 70, I'm more convinced. And it's the foundation of my life. If he truly is the Christ, then surrendering is not loss, it's life. In the last verse of the book of John 20:31, after all that's been written in this book, all that's been said, all the miracles, all the sayings of Jesus, John says this, "But these are written so that you will put your faith in Jesus as the Messiah and the Son of God. If you have faith in him, you will have true life." Faith in him. We often describe having faith to take that step toward him is just a want to. I want to be forgiven of my sins. I want to encounter the love of God in my life. That's faith. Will you act on it or delay it? Will you step toward it or be undecided? Conveniently undecided, because it could interrupt. Walking with Jesus, following him, could cost you something. But being someone who thinks well of him without following is self-deceptive. And so I invite you, same invitation I got when I was 17 years old. Will you step toward him today? Maybe for some of you, you need to do what I had to do, begin again. I mean, when I came to Christ, I was on fire. Ooh, man, I was amazing. For 2 weeks, I was the best Christian you have ever seen. I was incredible. And then a friend came by the house. He goes, "Hey, you want to go smoke a joint?" I went, "Yeah, I do." You know, that was great for a couple weeks, though. So I was in and out of this thing. So if I say that to say, if you need to jump back in, you're in good company, okay? But keep moving toward him. Keep stepping toward him. He loves you. He wants to forgive you. And he's God. Come in the flesh. Well, if you're here and you'd say, "You know what? I want to make that choice. I want to include you in a prayer." I'm going to pray in a moment. And if you're willing to say, I don't know everything, I don't know what all this means, but I'm going to take this step, then I want to pray a prayer with you. And we don't draw a lot of attention to people that are making this choice. So here, I'd like to ask you to just close your eyes. If everyone closes their eyes, everyone will have a sense of privacy. And if you're saying, "Mike, I'm in, I don't get it all, and I'll probably screw it up, but I'm going to step toward him today," would you just lift your hand? Just across the room. Oh, wow, yeah, okay. Many of us. Thank you so very much. Praise the Lord. Okay, here's what I want to do. Let's stand together. I'm going to lead us in a prayer. And this is a prayer of surrender. It's not a magic incantation. Look at it this way. This prayer is kind of like a push off the dock on the journey. Here we go. And the prayer is here. And I'm going to ask us all to pray it together. And I mean those of you who lifted your hands and the rest of us that are going to support you in that. And if you're here and you're going, "Well, I didn't lift my hand and I'm not so sure, and I feel manipulated into praying this prayer," then don't pray it. Just go watermelon, watermelon. No one will know, okay? But if this is for you, pray this prayer from your heart. Jesus is here. He's still alive. He's God. He forgives you. He loves you. Okay, outside voices, ready? Go. Jesus, I ask you to open my eyes and my heart to the truth of who you are. I choose today to turn toward you. I don't know or understand it all, but I surrender to you. I believe that you are God. I believe my sins are forgiven, and I believe you love me. Amen. Amen. Could we lift an applause to our friends that are making that choice today?